Hey guys, okay, so here's part 2 of the printmaking tutorial. So what I have here is I've got newspaper in my area because this part gets really messy and it's just way easier to clean up. So make sure the first thing you have is newspaper on your surface. The second thing you need, these are these small little plexiglass pieces that I've got back there with the printmaking supplies. This is our inking plate, okay? So this is what we're going to use to spread our ink out on so we get an even layer. Another thing we're going to be using to help us apply our ink to our printmaking linoleum block is a briar. So these, I mean, they look like a paint roller, but they're a little bit different material here. It's not spongy, it's more rubbery. Now be careful, I think I might have a few spongy ones back there, but I would make sure you get the ones that are rubbery. I would also make sure that your inking plate and your briar is both somewhat clean. Don't, especially if you're working after someone, don't be using a dirty plate or briar so that you're not contaminating your color. So for here's the block that I'm going to be using. This is not mine. This is one of my students from past years who left hers here. So I'm going to be using her block, but I also want to point out to you the type of ink that you want to use or you don't want to use. So where I have my printmaking stuff, in case you're back there digging around, I have block printing ink that it says it on there, and then I have screen printing ink. Don't use this stuff. I mean, it will work, but the consistency of it is a lot thinner and the color doesn't layer as vibrant on top of other layers. So I would really avoid this. But if you absolutely need to have a color that I only have in the screen printing stuff, you could make it work, but don't layer it on top of a dark color. You would want to layer it on top of white. But either way, this is not really the best stuff to use. I would just try to stick to the speedball stuff because usually a light color will layer over a dark color just fine with this. So what you're going to do is you're going to scoop out. I usually use a palette knife or something to kind of scoop out of the jar. And I'm going to just kind of wipe it on the plexiglass. Get as much off of there. It's really thick, and that's how it's supposed to be. Okay, if you get one that's a different consistency and it says block printing ink on it, it's probably bad. So just ask me before you throw anything away. So you take your briar and you're going to smooth that ink out on this plate. Not really. The plate is not really for for applying the ink to your piece. It's more or less the briar is. So you're going to just try to get a nice even coat on your briar. That looks pretty good. So now I'm going to move that away and I'm going to apply it to my block. Now, I'm only doing one color right now, but you could do like a gradient. I didn't think about that until I started the video, but you could apply 2 different colors to your piece here. So say I wanted like a green and a yellow where it kind of blends in the middle. That's really cool looking. So I'd swipe some green on it, I'd swipe the yellow on it, and then I'd use my briar to kind of get it to blend on my roller. And then you'd have a pretty gradient in between it, and then you could apply it on your piece that way. You can even do that with 3 colors. Oh, I'm wiping it off now. I shouldn't have done that. Let me apply some more. So get a good coat on there. And then what I have is, I probably should have done this first. That's okay. Working through it. So I've got these little pieces of paper that are about the same size. What I'm going to do, well, I'm only doing 1 layer, so this won't really matter. It'll be more important for the layers that you have multiple colors on. So I'll go ahead and show you how to do this. But for your first round, it's not super important. But you want to make sure that you line up your image as close as possible each time. So when you do that, that's a regular pencil. You want to maybe put some little guide marks on your paper. So I'm going to kind of mark the corners of my block so that I know where to line. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah, there it goes. You'll be able to know where to line up your, and this is dirty, it's extra paper, so you'll want pretty nice clean paper, but you'll know where to line up your stuff. So I'm going to kind of use that as my guide to put my thing on. Now, you could, if you're at home and you don't have the inking press that I have here, you could just really rub on that, and that would be one of those modifications that you'd have to do if you are quarantined. However, if you're at the house, not the house, if you're at the school, I'm going to move this camera so I don't have to mess with all that ink stuff. I have this block press, okay? You won't be able to really get a good idea of what it looks like over the camera, but it's this little piece of equipment that will help give a nice even pressure for your block. So just make sure when you apply it, you put it under there, and then you're going to press for a few seconds just to give it a good squeeze, and then your piece should have transferred the ink pretty evenly. There you go. So that is one out of however many I'm going to do. If I'm going to do 12, I would go back and label this 1/12. That's the first one out of the series. You'd want to label it as you go. Okay? So now, the neat thing too is you could do what's called a ghost image. So this is the first image that's going to have the bulk of the ink. You could do a ghost image with what is left over on the image or on the block. So you would just go back and apply another piece of paper and just reuse whatever's left on the block for a second image. I don't think you would have enough after a second one to be able to do a third, unless you really just want it to be a transparent thing. Maybe you're doing a bigger piece of paper and you want a bunch of different layers and opaqueness and transparency and all that, a variety. But so there's like the ghost image. See if I can get the camera to focus on it a little bit better. There, when I angle it, it kind of picks it up. So you can still see it. And that looks really neat too. So there's the comparison. So you don't always have to do a ghost image, but you might experiment with it a little bit. That might be one of those things that you can use both of these techniques in your sustained investigation sketchbooks, just to kind of experiment with different mediums and stuff. So anyways, have fun with this. This is something you don't always have to use, but it really could give some really neat effects to some of your stuff. So anyways, let me know if you guys have any questions.